Welcome, welcome everybody to our transformative conservation conversations. Please remember that you have captions that can translate from English into Spanish and Spanish into English. If you're not sure how to do it, just write in the chat and one of us will help us. So my name is Kim Joyner. I am with One Earth Conservation, and this is a follow through on our Parrot Conservation course. So I just want to do a few things before I shut up and we let Marc do most of the talking. And we have opening words from Tees Joka. What would change if we cared for a place or species, not because we owned it, but because we belonged to it? How can we transform the way we relate to one another and to other species so we don't control it and that we belong to it and can take care of them? Yeah, would you be willing to turn off the waiting room ding when people
Sure.
Oh, that would be great. So real quick for our new people that are here today, why are we here? We are here as a group of people to have conversations, to learn, to support one another, and how we can do this thing called transformative conservation. And what that means is we just don't do things like we've always done them. We want a sociobiotic economy. We want to, well, almost everything has to change. We want to change the way we relate to each other and to other species. And we want to change our social structures so that they're fair and equitable and where people can flourish. And so that's why we gather, because nobody knows how to do this. And we want to do it in every conservation project and in every conversation that we have. And so we're gathering to just kind of figure out, what does this look like? How do we do this? And so we're helping each other have these conversations. And as a reminder for our group, and again for our new people, we have guidelines and invitations about how we want to be with each other. And it'd be kindness, confidentiality. We don't give advice. We don't challenge each other. We ask questions. We're curious, et cetera, et cetera. So we just remind ourselves that we try to make this a safe and welcoming place, and also safe enough to be challenging. And so these are just some of our guidelines. And if you're not sure about them, let us know. We'll help you out. So before I introduce Marc, we are a community. We are trying to build community. So in the chat, if you would, if you feel comfortable, just say your name, or type your name. If you're from an organization or what part of the world you live in, that would be great. And why are you here today? What brings you here today? And you're welcome to use the chat all you want to talk to each other. Well, at least while I'm talking. Maybe you want to listen closely to Marc. But please just go ahead and introduce yourself into the chat. And since I've got the microphone, so I'm Laura Kim Joyner. I live in Des Moines, Iowa, in North America. And why are you here today? As I already said, I don't really know how to do transformative conservation, and yet we try to do it in our projects. And we need help because we're against a huge set way of doing things in economies and countries with corruption and violence. And so how do you transform the entire world? And how do you transform yourself? And so that's why I'm here. I'm here to learn and have community. And thank you all for coming. So that was a lot for my introduction. So keep going. Yeah. Oh, good. People are talking. This is great. And Marc, Dr. Bekoff, will be introducing himself in just a little bit. But let me just say a few words before he speaks. And for us, at least for us in the English-speaking world and in North America, is well known. I've used his books in many different organizations and projects that I've worked with as reading groups or as material for our various programs that we do. And so many books, can't even keep up with them, over 30 books. And he's a professor emeritus at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And his field, I keep saying cognitive ethology. I hope I have that right, but really into the behavior of animals. And then I would say maybe how that informs his approach to compassionate conservation. And he's going to talk about both of those things. And that's why we have him here. He may not, hello? He may not be a parrot expert, but we believe that the principles apply. And we could certainly grill him. We could say, well, that works for wolves. How might you guide us with parrots or with other wildlife that we work with? And Marc, I'm just so appreciative that you are here. And we said that you would just sort of kick it off about what this means to you. And you said you were going to maybe do that with an example with the wolf introduction. So I'm here to help support you, Marc, and I'll stop sharing and you can just take it away.
Yeah, I made some notes, but I don't really need them. Thanks for having me. It's good to meet all of you somehow. And and thank you for the work you've done, and you do. Um, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think we're all gathered here, and this is my first journey into your world. Um, to change the way in which we interact with non-human animals or other animals, or I'll just refer to them as animals, although humans are animals. I love the phrase transformative conservation, and I was just thinking about it before I came here on that's what the ever-growing field of compassionate conservation is all about. And you can find a lot on the web if you just do a web search you could do my name, compassionate conservation, because I've written a lot of essays for a diverse public. I write a lot for normal people. I guess we're all somewhat normal, but I write a lot for normal people who really want to know what's going on because very few people really know what's going on in the world of conservation. In fact, they don't know a lot of what's going on in the world of science or in general. So, I mean, I just have come to this field in a natural way because I grew up talking to all the animals who lived near me and my parents and friends. Sometimes they thought I was a bit crazy, but they never stopped me from doing it. And I was always wondering what they were thinking and feeling. And I was talking about what's called animal sentience. And really the word sentience means the ability to feel. Philosophers can write books about it that no one can understand and few people read. But that's been my interest forever is what are animals thinking and feeling about what is happening to them? And so Laura Kim's right. I've written a lot of books, and one of the first books that I wrote on this topic is called Minding Animals. And that came from a conversation I had with my parents decades ago that I always was wondering what's going on in the minds of other animals. So that would be minding them. And the other use of the phrase minding animals in English means caring for them. You're minding them. You're taking care of them. So, so where I've landed today, decades later, it was a bit nonlinear, but where I've landed today is really what I feel that I've been meant to do this. I just really do. I don't mean it in any cosmic, spiritual way, although I think that those are important, views of the world. It's just, I just followed the path that was that felt natural to me. So before we open it up to some questions, or Laura Kim's going to lead the conversation, Um, and I'm sure we'll return to this um, as well. One of the guidelines that I've tried to follow, and it's one of the guidelines to the field of I'm going to call it now the transformative field of compassionate conservation, is that um, first do no harm and don't, there's really few, if any, good reasons to kill other animals. So what I'm talking about, some people think is radical. I don't, wherever you live, but in the Western world, and probably some parts of the Eastern world, when you care about animals to the point that we all do, people call you a radical. They'll say, "Oh, you're just a radical animal rights activist." And I don't consider myself that. I'm interested in animal protection. So I tend not to use the word rights because it really misleads people into or to thinking incorrectly um, about what we're all doing. So if I had to capsule my goals, in a sentence or two, it would be that we need to coexist with other animals peacefully, and we need to stop harming them in the name of conservation, or which often comes down in the name of humans. We have this tendency to put ourselves at the top of all these misleading hierarchies that we build. So humans are above and separate from other animals. And really, none of that's true. We're not above other animals and we're not separate from them. We're mammals, obviously, and not all non-humans are mammals, but we're mammals. And I like to think that we have to view ourselves as part of, say, part of the rest of the world, not apart from. Um, and we're living in I guess it's now acceptable to call it a geological era called the Anthropocene. And the Anthropocene is often called the age of humanity. But in reality, it's in my eyes, it's become the rage of inhumanity. We're devastating our planet and we're devastating um, basically all of the non-human residents who with whom we're supposed to share the planet. So um, do you want me to just say a word about the wolves now, or do you want to get into that later, Laura Kim?
I just go with the wolves, and maybe when you use the wolf example, uh, maybe come back to what do you mean by compassionate conservation? If there's
Sure.
more to say than do no harm, and why is it important for conservation? Why is it important for the wolves? How's
Sure.
that?
Yeah. And I think when I talk about the wolves, I mean, I don't know much about parrots at all, to be quite frank with you. I love parrots. I love seeing them. I've had a conversation with a parrot in the neighborhood. I think he's a double yellow rescued parrot who I met him once or twice and he remembered my name and I didn't remember his name. So that was very, very disturbing to me. So he's Merlin, the double yellow parrot. I mean, so with the wolves in Colorado, um, wolves used to live here. I'll just give you a very quick history. Wolves used to live in the state of Colorado. I don't know if any of you have been here. It's absolutely beautiful. The background is what I'm looking at. I'm very fortunate to have a view of the front range of the Rocky Mountains. Um, Humans killed all the wolves about 90 years ago. Um, about Well, it could have been even 8 or 10 years ago. People wanted to bring wolves back to Colorado. These are called reintroduction projects or repatriation projects because the wolves used to live here. So over time, the project was passed in a ballot issue or a vote among the people in Colorado. And who the first wolves who were released arrived here about a year and a half ago in December of 2023. 10 wolves. Um, the program is run by Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and I'm sure wherever you are, there's an organization that is similar to them. They oversee animals and open rangeland parks, different um, habitats in your country or province or district or county. So what's happened is the wolves who were brought in, the first five, were very successful. They were too successful. They started killing what we call livestock, cows and sheep, um, because they're an easy meal. They're like room service in a hotel. And people got upset. The ranchers got upset. Colorado Parks and Wildlife went in and demolished the first breeding family of wolves who Colorado has seen in the last 90 years. And that really opened up the door to a lot of concern. So compassionate conservation would require, it would be like what we would, say in English, it would be a mandate to let the wolves be wolves. We can't kill wolves for being wolves. Um, and perhaps among, the parrots and other birds, for sure, you can't, you shouldn't be harming them for being the very animals who they have evolved to be. So right now there's just a lot of discussion and a lot of disagreement over how the wolves should be treated. Traditional conservation focuses on population or species level, whereas compassionate conservation focuses on the well-being or welfare of every individual animal. So that's basically um, I've been working in this area for a really long time, and it was about 15 years ago at a meeting in England at Oxford University where the field of compassionate conservation was basically born, although many years ago, maybe 25 or 30 years ago, I was writing essays with a philosopher, Dale Jamieson, who's very well known in environmental ethics, about the importance of individuals. So that's basically it. We're concerned with the health, the well-being, the welfare of every single individual, and we don't believe that individuals should be harmed for the good of their species. And the individuals surely don't want to be. A wolf or a parrot or other animal has no idea about the status um, of their species. And I just learned this week that 9 of the 25 wolves who were released here are now dead, and that's 40%. And I I wonder, and I've actually been writing about this today, so I don't mean it as a joke, but would I go to work or go to the store if I only had a 60% chance of surviving? Would you leave your house if you thought there was a 40% chance of being harmed? And no one I know would say yes. So 40% is a high number, and it means that if for the wolves, if it continues that way, they can never develop a sustainable breeding population. So I'll stop there. I know that's a load, but and somebody I'm sure, or maybe you can see the relationship to working with endangered members of other species, including, birds and parrots.
Yes, and if you don't mind, Mark, I just would go right into a parrot question for you.
Uh-oh.
I would like your advice, and I think people here would too. We, in so many of our countries, you can't really call it reintroduction. You can call it
Hmm.
rescue and release because birds are so often confiscated in illegal wildlife trade. And so countries like Honduras or Guatemala and all these different countries, the authorities have tons of birds. And we don't have the money, we don't have the resources. And so we've got all these individual birds that we really struggle to take care of. And then we have to let them go. And maybe not in the best circumstances, and they get harmed when you
Mhm.
let them go. I mean, if you do it right, it's low loss, but there's still a loss with letting them go. So, what do we do to take care of every individual animal when we have limited resources? And we're all conservationists, but dealing with confiscated birds is part of what we do. How do we deal with that anguish that individuals are going to get harmed in our work because of the wildlife trade?
Yeah, that's a great question. People have asked me that about animals other than wolves and carnivores. Um, Personally, I think I'd rather be a free animal than a captive animal. And when I say face the consequences, I'm not saying that the animals know about the consequences, but a lot of animals have proven to be very hardy, very strong because they've evolved different behavioral or physiological mechanisms to survive. Um, and it's a great question, Laura Kim, and it's just one of the ones that plagues me and other people is, um, well, in a sense, it could be, is it better to be a captive animal where you get food and bed and veterinary care if you're lucky, or a free animal and you have to um, risk the harms that can come to a free animal? Um, I can't provide a great answer to it, but I think I would rather be free and try to survive in that um, with as many freedoms as I can have.
I don't I don't know if there is a solution. I mean, what do we do with the burden of the wildlife trade and extraction? I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
any of us really know how to do it or have infinite resources to do the work. And so maybe just being aware of it, going, well, we're just going to let them all go because we don't have enough money to feed them. But at least we're aware that those individual animals are individuals with different behavior, and they're going to suffer if we have inadequate food and caging, blah blah. So just maybe being aware of it is what your answer gave to us. And in
Mhm.
wondering about that, I keep using the word cognitive ethology.
Oh yeah.
Behavior of animals. Maybe because the individual behavior matters. So maybe you could say what that is and why that's important in conservation.
Yeah, I mean, cognitive ethology is really the study of animal minds, how they work, um, how they process information. So it's very easy to reduce it to the study of animal, intelligence and animal emotions and sentience, the ability to feel. Yeah. Um, and I'm a biologist, so when you say ethology, it means I'm interested in questions like how do different um, how do different patterns of adaptation evolve? So I always think of learning as adaptation, thinking as adaptation, feelings as adaptation, because what you're thinking and what you're feeling, what you're experiencing in your mind and perhaps in your heart is going to direct your actions. Um, you know what I have to do? Can I just have 1 second? I left all my windows open and it's pouring. I, just 1 second.
Bathroom break, everybody.
I'm here.
I see blue skies behind him.
Hello, Fernando. Does everybody have their translations worked out? ¿Puedes tener captions para traducir? Oh, Norland está aquí. Hi, Norland. Hola, Norland.
Hola Laura Kim, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo
Bien,
están todos?
bien. Está bien que estés
Gracias.
aquí.
Gracias por la
Hola,
invitación.
I'm back.
Okay, okay.
Um,
Mhm.
so,
Go,
so I thought about something. Should I just say it?
just go. Yeah.
I got up. So sentience and emotions really form the foundation of compassionate conservation. And once again, and I love the term transformative um, conservation, really is um, it, feelings are the basis for compassionate conservation. That's really what it comes down to. And I do a lot of work on dogs, but I've done a lot of field work on coyotes, some on wolves, and some on birds who live around where I live. Um, but really, they all have emotional lives, they all have feelings, and they all have to adapt to different ecological conditions. Just like parrots. Um, so I try to imagine what it would be like to be a parrot, or what it would be like to be a crow or a raven or a wolf or a dog or a coyote. And I know I can't be one of them 100%, but I can tell you right now that parrots, many other animals, including the animals who I study, don't like to be in pain and don't like to suffer. And I feel that we as humans should not be inflicting more pain and suffering into their lives, because you know how hard it is in the best of situations, how difficult it could be to have a good life as a wild animal.
Yes, I've seen a lot of predation of parrots in the wild and starvation as well in wild birds where they are. So it's definitely hard wherever you go. Benedicta had a question in the chat, and I just think we'll go right for that because I think you can help with this as well.
Sure.
So if we're thinking about individual animal lives and behavior and welfare, how do we study that in wild animals? How do we get the money? What is the technique? What's the methodology? How do we do that? How are people doing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the bases of classical ethology from people like Konrad Lorenz and Nico Tinbergen is careful observation. Another, to me, and I'm a scientist and I love science, but another is common sense. I mean, just knowing enough about, say, the behavior and natural history of a particular species of parrot, bird, mammal, fish, amphibians, reptiles, insects will tell you that they don't want to be and don't like being mistreated and harmed. So a lot of what you need to know about because I know there's so much variation among different species of parrots, like there is variation among different species of mammals, and there's also individual variation within a species. So a lot of it is just knowing what they need to survive. Looking at how they've evolved different behavior patterns, knowing that every individual needs some kind of food, nourishment, and and feel safety. That they want to live in a safe place, um, and they want to get on, I believe, living the lives that, when I say they're meant to live, really what that can translate into is living the lives that their ancestors lived, and be able to experience and perform the behaviors that have evolved over time. And so that's why in my own work, I never talk about the dog or the wolf or the coyote because there's so much variation among them. So if you look for some common goals of survival, it would be having enough food, not getting sick, having social companions if you're a member of a social species, and having a safe place to live and sleep and raise your family and be able to deter or somehow defend yourself amongst I guess nasty competitors or and predators.
One of and I'm kind of hearing the conversation in the chat a little bit. It reminded me of is just what do you just put yourself in their paws or their fins and their feathers and what are they feeling? And it's I was taught you can't anthropomorphize, but now it's more as a critical anthropomorphism, right? Where we go, well, what do we think? What's common sense? And then we use all the science that we can to, in the research and cognitive ethology. And I just want to mention, we use the 5 domains, and we score parrots in the wild and we score them in captivity because wild parrots don't score 100% by any means. And
Right.
So maybe you could help us, maybe talk about anthropomorphism and critical anthropomorphism, because we're still catching flack about that. It's
Right.
still not okay. And so, what would you say to us as conservationists in the field? What would we say to people who question us on this?
Well, I'm just going to open a paper and I if I can figure it out, I'll put the link in. I don't talk about anthropomorphism anymore because we have to be anthropomorphic. And so there's Gordon Berghart's critical anthropomorphism, and I put forth the idea of what I called biocentric anthropomorphism. I mean, I think somebody would have to live remotely, absent any communication, perhaps in a dark cave, not to be aware of how much we're learning about animal emotions. The work on, since a lot, most of you, if not all of you, study birds, the work on avian cognition and emotions is amazing. And so when people say, "Oh, well, that we don't know if that's true," they'll say to me, "We don't know if that's true. You're being anthropomorphic." I say, "Well, what do you mean?" And the reason I say that is because if you've lived with a dog, they'll say, "Well, you're being anthropomorphic about the wolves," and I'll say, "Oh, so do your dogs have feelings? Do they get happy? Do they get sad? Do they get afraid, jealous, envious, whatever you want to call it?" They'll go, "Oh, yeah." And then it gets really quiet because they realize that they're using, "Oh, you're being anthropomorphic," to basically diminish what you're saying, basically to say, how do you know a dog doesn't like something? Well, if you've ever lived with a dog, you know when they like something or have a preference for something or they don't. And I know you can say the same about parrots. I mean, and other birds. That, once again, does any individual like being harmed? No. And if from a biological point of view, they've evolved all these adaptations to avoid being harmed. Very simple. Anti-predator behaviors, threat displays, a way that one parrot or wolf can tell another that I'm going to harm you or beat you up or fight with you if you don't move away from something, if you don't submit to something. So when people say you're only being anthropomorphic, I just say I have no idea what you mean. We have to be anthropomorphic. So what I'm pleased about is that the word has basically it's almost disappeared from any reliable conversations I've seen in in the scientific in the literature now. So I like the critical anthropomorphism, um, and I like my idea of biocentric anthropomorphism. But I think it's really important to realize that solid science would support the fact that parrots, other birds, other vertebrates can have feelings. They don't have to be like ours. Sometimes people will say, um, "Oh, they're not like ours." Well, of course they're not like ours. I mean, mine might not be like yours, but it doesn't mean that I don't feel pleasure and pain and grief and you do or I do and you don't. And I've been through this with a lot of humans who express joy and grief and sadness in different ways. But it would be wrong to say that because they don't experience it like me, or non-humans don't experience it like humans, that that the non-humans don't have it. And I know I have a blurry screen, but yeah, you can't see it. Well, anyway, I wrote a book called The Emotional Lives of Animals about 20 years ago, and a brand new edition just came out last year with about 300 new references. And so and I just oh, it worked. It's the first time I've ever used chat. I sent you a link for a paper about anthropomorphism. Um, but we just need to be really careful when we say certain things. But I don't think there's anybody, I mean, I would like to believe there's nobody I know who would say that parrots can't feel stressed, they can't feel anxious, they don't develop fears, or they can't enjoy themselves. I mean, it's just, to me, it's absurd for anyone to say that. So when I talk to people, and like I said, there's very, very few now, they'll say, well, how do you know that wolves or parrots or other animals experience joy and grief and sadness or pain and suffering? And I would say, how do you know that they don't? And that usually ends the conversation because you know that parrots feel fear. And just watch birds when they're flying. There's actually been a lot of research over the years on play behavior in birds. And when you look at what they do when they play like your dog, except they fly. I mean, so the my summary statement there would be: if someone says you're being anthropomorphic, ignore them. It's a waste of time to fight them because you have important work to do for the birds. And what I often end my talks with saying is that I work for animals, not against people. I only have limited time and energy and money and welfare, well-being, my own sanity. So I work for the animals, and I'm not going to spend 1 second arguing with somebody about whether a parrot can feel joy or grief or sadness or stress or and I'm not going to argue 1 second to think that anybody would say, well, they don't really care, because that's what they're saying when they say, why try to conserve parrots? Why try to rescue animals? Well, you're rescuing them to make their lives better. I mean, who that would the radical view to me is it would be radical to think you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, I always say, what's wrong with showing compassion? I mean, I mean, to me, I would hope that it would be radical and not to show compassion for other animals. So anyway, yeah.
Um, so, talking about our colleagues or the general public, we're in a parrot crisis right now. We're losing our parrots, and untold thousands are suffering.
Mhm.
And so there is a sense that we want to change public perception at a global level to stop the demand and stop the trade. And so, but my question around that's going to come back to you, Mark, and your work. Is there hope? Have you seen a change in how we do conservation, that it is more compassionate since you began this work?
Yeah. Not by leaps and bounds, not in any huge way, but I have undergraduate students, graduate students, say young researchers, young professors, sending me emails and saying, I'm interested in a particular conservation problem, like coexisting with parrots or helping parrots or wolves or dogs, or, I work with carnivores, helping them along. Um, but I don't want to harm or kill them. And I want to try to protect them from being harmed and killed. Yeah, I see that. Yes, it's growing, but far too slowly for me. But a lot of it is driven by people contacting scientists or politicians or policymakers. So that's why I write a lot for a public audience, non-scientists, but people who care about animal well-being. And one thing I do, once again, is I say that I bring it home by talking about um, cats and dogs, different companion animals, different pets. And the article that I wrote a few months ago comparing wolves to dogs generated a lot of positive press and a lot of positive responses, because a lot of people who were harming wolves or wanted them harmed didn't realize that all dogs came from wolves. Wolves and dogs are very closely related. So and they don't want other animals to suffer. So therefore, by allowing a wolf to be harmed or killed or doing it themselves, they are experiencing precisely what your dog would suffer from or experience. So, you know, I mean, I also ask people, well, I mean, and I know there's lots of pet parrots. Why would you want a pet who's like a rock? There used to be pet rocks to substitute for dogs or robotic dogs, and they didn't sell well because there's a shared emotion. I call the emotions that humans and non-humans share social glue. It binds them together. And when you talk to people who live with parrots or live with dogs or cats or other companion animals, they empathize with them. They feel their feelings. So I think a lot of changes is currently being driven by writing for quote normal people who don't have advanced degrees or who don't work with other animals, but they care for them very much.
That was sort of one of the comments in the chat, and also was one of our questions we talked about. Mark, was what can we do? And the we being, we have researchers on here, we have rescue people, we have field conservationists, we have people who have just 3 or 4 grades of education. That you've got everybody here right now.
Yep.
So what can any of us do in our areas to promote compassionate conservation so we can transform human systems?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. You can do whatever. I always tell people you can do whatever you can do. So I know people who have never had a high school degree who work at local humane societies where they live or rescue centers and talk about what you do. You're going to talk to some people they'll say, well, what about all the humans who are suffering? Well, I care about the humans who are suffering, but I choose to work for non-humans, but there's a lot of good people working for humans. There's a new field. It's not brand new, but it's really caught a lot of attention called the One Health movement. And the United Nations has a big program as well as other big organizations. And what they're showing is that working for non-humans is good for humans. Um, when we harm them, we harm ourselves. Um, and so that has really caught on a lot. And I do a lot of work with Jane Goodall. Some of you may have heard of her. She studies chimpanzees. She's been around for a really long time. She's a good friend of mine, and she has a kids program called Roots and Shoots. And I know that there are Roots and Shoots programs in Mexico, South America, Central America. And the goal of Roots and Shoots is to help animals, people, and the environment. It spells ape, and that's what Jane studies as chimpanzees. But taking care of a non-human helps humans and helps where they live, and any combination of that, you know, and just show people that when I say we, I mean you all and other people, that we're all normal people and we happen to care for non-humans. But caring for non-humans doesn't mean you don't care for humans. It just means that you have decided that you're going to work for the well-being of or welfare of non-human animals. And another thing, Laura Kim, and everybody here, is we all know that killing doesn't work. It can be a quick solution to a problem, but there's very few examples where killing animals has had any long-term positive conservation effects. But it's quick and easy. I mean, I don't know how people do it, but it's quick and easy. You get rid of the problem, and then a month later, or a year later, or 3 or 4 years later, um, the problem comes back.
That was one of the questions in the chat. And I know we're getting close to the time when you need to go.
No,
But
I'm okay. This is great. Yeah.
okay, yes, so, but maybe, and then I know we want, and to everybody that's on, you'll have a chance to talk to each other without
Oh,
Mark.
please do. Yeah.
Yeah, so just hang in there. We're going to do that in about 5 minutes. The question in the chat was, it's about this killing, the invasive species problem, and what do we do with that? And with parrots, we do get it. And one way that we get it is some people consider the parrots as the invasive species because
Right.
they're the crops, they've been translocated, and then in other situations, in Puerto Rico, they shoot the red-tailed hawks because the red-tailed hawks are predating on the newly released, very, very endangered Puerto Rican parrot, and it's part of the government program. And the red-tailed hawks are in higher numbers because the ecosystem is out of balance. So we do get confronted with that in our release sites. People want to go out and kill the black iguanas or the snakes because they're getting into the cavities and eating the parrots. So how do we deal in conservation with this idea of one species is competing with another?
Once again, I would be lying if I said there were any easy answers. But like with the wolf and other reintroduction projects, we tried to put wolves where they would only have natural prey, not domestic, not food animals, if you will. Um, I, I know people yell at me and think sometimes I'm just crazy for saying this, but in the natural world, there are predators and prey. There are going to be individuals of dominant species. I mean, it's just how things have evolved, but I don't think anybody could deny that our interference in their lives have thrown off natural natural relationships, if you will. I mean, I don't like the fact that there are predators and prey, but that's how that's what evolution resulted in, you know. And and so a lot of what's going on now, say, perhaps in Puerto Rico with those two species, is they're totally out of balance, but they're totally out of balance because of us, not because of them. Um, and so I'm not sure, I mean, if you want to reintroduce some animals, I understand, once again, the wolf situation. I understand that among the wolves, and actually this is a real world example, that wolves in Colorado are going to meet other predators like black bears and cougars, mountain lions. And a wolf was killed by a mountain lion, obviously one of the reintroduced wolves. That's tragic, but that's natural. Okay. I wish it wouldn't have happened, but that's distinctly different from what happened last weekend when members of Colorado Parks and Wildlife went out with a big gun and shot a wolf for killing cows. So So I think your question and questions like this are great, Laura Kim, but a lot of times ecosystems are whacked out of balance because of us. So there are going to be predators and prey. Maybe it would be possible to reintroduce parrots into an area where there are fewer, if any, predators. But the one thing about birds, and I know you all know this, but I had not thought about it. And well, it's been a while when somebody said, well, yeah, for a wolf or a land mammal to travel, they travel, they don't fly. They can't cover the distances, say, that a bird can cover in the same amount of time. So I would have no idea how you could restrict the flight patterns of a bird to prevent them from going into an area where it's dangerous. So it is true that there are predators and prey, and I felt horrible to learn when we learned that one of the wolves had been killed by a cougar. But wolves, cougars, grizzly bears, and black bears just they don't get along with one another. Okay, I mean, and they've worked their relationships out over time. Um, the other thing I'll say is, and this has come up a lot, is, and it's nothing private. Given the way that the wolf reintroduction is going now, I wish we had not brought wolves back because we're not ready for them, mainly in terms of their interactions with humans. So I would imagine that a lot of bird species and perhaps a lot of parrot species are in trouble because of their overlap with humans, right? Over time, non-humans will work out their relationships, and they may not be the relationships that you and I would want to be part of, but at least it's more, quote, natural.
There are two really good questions in the chat, Mark, and so you just have to tell me when you need to get off, and we'll go to our conversations.
Oh, this is easy to do. I just won't respond to the other people.
Let's do these last two questions, and I'm going to do both so you can decide what to do with them. One is, how do you deal with different cultures having different understandings of compassion? So you're, and I think all of us work in multicultural contexts.
Sure.
And then another one, which is different, but I think it's so important. So would you say that compassion is essential to solve ecological and conservation problems?
Mhm. Oh, I think I'll write some books on that when I get off. No, I mean, you're asking great questions. I mean, just being honest, I think cultural traditions need to be honored. And I've said this, and years ago I was the only white guy, if you will, at a meeting of Native Americans and their relationships with animals. And I was invited, and I wasn't allowed to take notes or record anything or ask any questions. And I was the only, if you will, white guy in the room. And I heard things that I didn't like to hear. But then I thought, who am I to tell these people what to do? So at the end, they actually asked me, the guy who organized the meeting, a very world-renowned Native American scholar who invited me. He happened to teach at the University of Colorado. He said, "What do you think?" And so I was honest. I said, I wish you all didn't do some of the things you do, but I can't tell you what to do because members of my cohort look at what we're doing to the world without the reverence and compassion. And so I really feel that way. And I've been pushed by a lot of people who honestly sometimes get very angry with me because they'll say, well, a lot of the Native Americans in North America, they do kill animals. They use every part of the animal. It's not like they go out and shoot them for fun and then just leave them to rot. Um, and so your question is a really good one. So the conversations I've had with people really, I feel, have been mutually respectful. And when I made that comment at this meeting, which I think it was around 25 or 30 years ago, not a person got angry with me. Not It was a group of Native American elders, very, very sophisticated individuals. And they said, thank you for telling us. It wasn't like, who are you, white guy, to tell us what to do? But I do think that we can express our values and and still be multicultural, but always be polite and respectful. I really feel that way. And I get yelled at from people saying, well, you should have just told them to stop killing these animals. And I said, well, you go tell them that. I mean, I think being at that meeting was one of the most wonderful events of my life in decades. Just I felt honored that they would have somebody like me there, and the guy who invited me knew exactly what I was going to say, but did not. But like I said, I couldn't take notes, take pictures, or ask questions until they opened it up at the end. So it's hard. I mean, there's no easy solutions here. If people are looking for, like, a yes no answer, maybe you should just go sell ice cream or something like that. um,
It-
well, tell me the second question. The second question,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, the second question was, so would you say that compassion is absolutely essential to solving ecological
Oh,
problems
yeah.
or
Um,
conservation problems?
you know, I I I like to think that compassion and empathy, putting yourself into the wings or the feet or the paws of other animals is crucial and really needed. Um, I'm not sure. I think it is needed at some level, but I do know some. I know some conservation biologists who are darn good conservation biologists who work their whatever's off to save animals, who are not particularly compassionate or empathic. They just believe that we should not be stepping in and trying to solve all the problems without knowing the details of the problem at hand. So it could be two species competing with one another. It could be a loss of habitat and why that came about. So I do think some empathy or compassion is needed, but but perhaps it doesn't have to, um, be the only thing. I'll give you a good example. So compassionate conservation there's a lot of compassionate conservation projects in India. And there were some problems in a province. A friend of mine worked on this with some elephants, I believe. And so what they did was they had lookouts. They had people who went out and looked for the animals. And then instead of saying there was a species problem, they said there was a problem in a particular location. And that changed the whole name of the game. Because once you label an animal as being a problem, the people who don't want them around are going to capitalize on that. So what they did was they got local people to go out at the time of day when they thought there would be say, an elephant, or it could have been a tiger who could harm people, and not say there's a problem elephant or a problem tiger. There's a problem location, and that changed the name of the game. I actually write about that a lot in my emotions book. So there's different ways to refer to other animals who might be problematic without labeling them, because if you don't like somebody or something and you label it a problem, you've really, I feel that you've doomed them.
Well, I could go on forever, but I am
No, I can stick around for a few minutes, and I'd love to hear what other people are saying. I'm sorry for monopolizing your time,
well, if
but
that's the case, let me go into the conversation piece. And Mark, if people are too focused on you, you could just drop off, and I'll give you a thank you note. But
no, I've got about 15 minutes. I am really enjoying this. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
it is really great to connect with you. So for everybody else, and I don't think we sometimes go into breakout rooms, and let me ask Gail and Sylvia, I know we often like to be in the same group. The questions that we have to talk amongst ourselves, I'm inviting us, is, and I'll show the screen so it'll translate a little better. So these are our same questions we ask like every time. And so what did you learn or experience during the session that was important for you? And then how could you incorporate the understanding of cognitive ethology, compassionate conservation, the stories from Mark? How can we take what we learned today and apply it in our own lives? These are the questions that I am suggesting that we talk amongst ourselves with. And so Gail and Sylvia, do we want to do two different rooms, maybe a Spanish and English room, or what do you suggest?
Well, I think as long as Mark is with us, I think everyone would rather be together. Because I know I'd like him to be able to chime in, and I actually have a question. I have something I'd like to say, which is, you really helped me, Mark, because the issue of people saying, "Oh, you care about animals and not people," has come up repeatedly through the years, and I was always unsure, like, how to deal with that, and you made it so clear that it's all important, and I can only have so much time and energy, and that's the direction I choose to put my time and energy, but it doesn't mean I don't care about people, and that's the absolute truth. That is correct, and it was really helpful for me to hear that even someone like you, who's been doing this for so long, and a lot of people know who you are, deal with the same issue all the time, because it frustrates me to no end that people feel like it has to be one or the other. No, it's all important and all intertwined. So I want to thank you for that.
No, well, thank you. I know I know a lot of youngsters who get um, assaulted, if you will, with and it really, really upsets them. And I'll say, don't get upset. Just say you've made your choices, and your choices are absolutely valid, and they've made their choices. But once again, this One Health movement is it's huge. So anyway, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Would
So
anyone?
why don't people put up their hands if they have a question? Either use the reaction tool or literally put on your camera and put up your hand, and this way you can interact outside of the chat with questions. I'd like to welcome Loriana too, who just arrived with us. Hi, Loriana.
Right. And what did you learn and how can you apply it in your lives? And I'll just take a couple minutes per person. And I see Fernando had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. To me, it was very enlightening to hear again, because I heard it from you, Laura, the word compassion.
I ordered the bracket.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Without compassion, I think it's literally impossible to coexist with other beings.
Mm-hmm.
As Albert Einstein defined time and space as one thing, I am telling you guys, species cannot be understood without niche,
Mm-hmm.
without a place to exist. Now, it's a fact that we humans, we take over space. We invade every single space. Now we have even come out of this planet and we are moving outwards.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just two things. It's the third element, what really impresses me, compassion. Because we humans, being so mighty and powerful, we could destroy everything around us without that compassion element. So I will apply that from now on in my attitude towards my relationship with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Three elements:
Yeah.
the species, the niche, and the spiritual element of compassion to be able to coexist.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think we still have some time. You want to give a reflection on what you learned and how you might apply it in your life?
There are some comments in the chat as well that people might want to take a look at.
Yeah, Kaylee, that's a great comment. You went into vet med, so you could do ecology, compassion, and work on the individual animal. Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
right. Anyone else want to have a comment or interaction? Share in the chat or with each other what you learned and how you might apply it.
Now everybody's shy.
Yes, no. Exactly. Well,
Don't be shy.
I'll tell you, I learned a lot by being with you all, and I learned a lot by listening to you. And I'm a hopeful monster, they say in English. I'm really an optimist, and this adds to my optimism quotient, if you will. But I want to thank you all for what you're doing. And I love what Fernando said, because I am a scientist, but there's just nothing wrong with talking about compassion or empathy or spiritual relationships. I mean, how could anybody? I mean, I would say, because you all work on parrots, but I would say the same for the animals, the magnificent animals I work with. How could you not feel some kind of spiritual, or in English, intangible relationship with them? I mean, I don't, when I watch nature shows, um, and I've talked to Jane a lot about this. How could anybody not be inspired by biodiversity? How I mean, I know most people. No, I really thank you for having me, because it just really, the question on cultural traditions, the question on why work for non-humans when there's so many humans suffering. They're good questions, but they shouldn't be judgmental questions. I think we need to be a lot less judgmental in our relationships with other people. Um, that's why I avoid most other people, but, but we shouldn't be judgmental in our relationship with non-human animals. Because once again, when you get back to the fact that every individual matters, yeah, there's some nasty animals out there. People say, "Oh, you think animals make love, not war?" No, I don't. I've spent thousands of hours in the field with animals who I wouldn't invite over for dinner, who I don't want to meet. When I lived in the mountains of Colorado, outside of Boulder, actually behind those mountains, you see, I had mountain lions or cougars, coyotes, black bears right at my house, right at my door. And I think it's a combination of luck, but I think it's a combination of the connection they may have felt. They knew that I was not going to harm them. Does that mean they wouldn't harm me? No, not at all. But of the decades I lived there with the very few neighbors, there was not one single injurious interaction between any of the resident black bears, coyotes, mountain lions, bobcats, red foxes. There wasn't one dog or cat who was attacked by them. So, do I think that there's an element of luck? Oh, I surely do. But I think there's an element that they knew that no one on that hillside was going to harm them. I really believe that. And one of my scientist friends, who is about as narrow-minded as any human could be and survive, said, "Well, that's just too flaky," they'll say, or fuzzy in English. You're talking about that they knew about you. Well, of course they knew about me. They know about other non-humans with whom they're coexisting, who's harmful and who's not, and they avoid the harmful ones. I mean, it's just so silly to me. So anyway, Fernando, you got me going on this intangible spiritual connection. Gracias.
In case, Mark, you're not reading the chat, somebody says they're really inspired to continue doing the work that they're doing, and someone else mentioned the importance of not labeling animals. I just want to make sure you hear that before you go. And I want to say what inspired me today, or what I really heard was your humility, Mark, and saying, "I don't have the answer, and it's hard."
Well, I'm tired of arrogant scientists who I have a hat because my last name is Bekoff. So somebody gave me this hat and I wear it sometimes. It says, "Back off, man. I'm a scientist." And I mean, I've been saying this for decades. I mean, scientists are wonderful people. So are musicians and philosophers and homeless people with whom I've worked. I taught for decades at the local jail. I mean, they're human beings. They've done things that are horrible, but you're going to just continue to hold things against them. But I think that if we're humble and we show humility, it really opens the door for trying to solve solutions that may involve us, or that likely involve us, because we're just so invasive, and stuff. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to deal with certain questions, and people will say, well, but you're a scientist. And I'll say, that's why I don't know how to deal with certain questions, because I'm not, in English, we use the word omniscient. I don't know everything there is to know about everything, and no one does, except some of my colleagues who think that they do.
Well, Laura Kim, I was wondering if you want to share with Mark the story that you tell about what you were taught in veterinary school about dogs and anesthesia, and it just shows how far we've come. Would you want to share that?
I don't mind sharing it. I just know we need to let people go. Mark, I often tell this story. When I was in veterinary school, and Bertie Rowland was the one who actually told me a lot about this. Anyway, a dog was coming out of hip surgery and anesthesia and was howling and moaning in the kennel cage, waking up. And I asked the resident, I was a student, I said, so can we give the dog anything? It sounds like he's in pain. And the resident said, straight out, that's just a reaction to the anesthesia. They don't feel pain like we do. And that was in the mid 1980s. We were not taught how to use pain medication in vet school in the 1980s. And now it's standard. It's standard.
I was just told, I'm going to say within the last few months, a very similar story where somebody was watching a dog, and in a sort of situation, maybe a little different, but a similar situation. And they were told that they're expressing the pain, but they don't really feel it. This would be 2025. So you know what my response always is? I'm glad I'm not that guy's dog. I mean, I always say, when people say I love animals and I harm them or I kill them, I always say, I'm glad you don't love me. No, I mean, really, it's just crazy the way people express themselves. And, there's always been a problem in the veterinary medicine establishment about pain and suffering and anthropomorphism or things like that. I'm really heartened because I work with a lot of vet students from time to time who tell me that things are changing. And I think they really, well, Laura Kim, you might likely know better than I do, but things are changing, but there are still people around who just use that old Cartesian or the views of Descartes, that animals are just machines and their screaming has nothing to do with what they're really feeling. I, in English, we say it blows my mind that anybody could have that view of the world, but sadly they do. But you all really inspire me because you're doing what you do. You clearly like what you do. It's not an easy job what you all are doing. I mean, it takes a lot of perseverance, and it takes a lot of belief that you can make a difference. And that, of course, is one of Jane Goodall's major contributions, is everybody can make a difference. Everybody. And the minute somebody tells you you can't make a difference, I would probably just leave the room rather than be nasty and say something that I wish I didn't say. So anyway, well, thank you all. I'd love to come back sometime again, and maybe we could reverse the situation, and you will educate me about parrots. I love parrots. I know very little about them. Um, I, I've seen. I have a friend who lives north of Sydney, Australia, on a beautiful land, and he's got lovely parrots there. I mean, I love watching them and just looking at them. They're beautiful animals, and they'll squawk at me like, "What are you doing here, you dumb human?" And just I just sit there and enjoy them. But thank you for all you're doing. We need you. The world
Yes.
needs you.
And I'm going to invite people to turn on their videos because we're really at the end. I only have two logistic things. We'll set out a link for the recording.
Oh, good.
A summer break, and we'll start back up in September. And if you have any ideas about future guests or future conversations or where this group should go, email us and give us a contact. And we always like to try to invite gratitudes, sharing agradecimientos en los últimos minutos. So why don't we all just say goodbye and turn on our videos and express any remaining gratitudes before we go.
I put our email in the chat if you want to email us. Go ahead, Mark.
Can I share the link? I would love to share it.
Sure.
No, I mean, do I need permission from everybody on the... I mean, I will share it with thousands of people, and I guarantee you most of them, I don't know all of them, but a lot of them would be agreeing with us, and they might not know about your wonderful work and the work Laura Kim has been doing in her conservation group. So if I have permission to share it when Laura Kim sends it, I will share it widely, and you can share it too. Sometimes I say things I wish I didn't say. I don't feel that way most of the time. So you can go share it, but don't give out my email address. If people want to find me, they can. And thank you. Fernando, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to advise everybody to read a beautiful, beautiful poem. It was written by the Nicaraguan Rubén Darío, famous poet. The title of the poem is Los Motivos del Lobo, the Wolf's Motives. Please read it. It's so wonderful. It's a very old, but it's obvious that this guy was special. With that, I say goodbye.
Fernando, would you email me it? It's Laura Kim.
Don't say it. Laura Kim will give him your email.
Okay, yeah, do that.
Yeah, but please do share the link. We love this to get out to as many people as possible.
Okay, so think of a good title because it'll go to people who speak many different languages too. Yeah, it'll be in English, but yeah. So, well, thank you all. Lots of peace and love to you all. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to go to another meeting that's not going to be as much fun.
Bye. Gracias a todos. Ten buen día. Have a good day. Bye-bye.